people really riled up, and that is, you can see it right there, the Lake Street Bridge. It's 109 years old and will be under construction for 3 years. And that's the part that has a lot of people scratching their heads. And we want to bring in Professor Joseph Schwieterman, who is employed by DePaul, but also is the president of the Transportation Research Forum, the Chicago chapter. Thank you so much for your time today.
Great to be here.
So this bridge is 109 years old. It will be being repaired for quite some time. This has some people upset. Let's talk about what repairs will be done within that 3-year span.
You know, really is kind of a tough situation because you look at the Lake Street Bridge, which crosses the Chicago River, just kind of across the street from the Merchandise Mart. And that's one of our remarkable historic bridges where the L, the green line, pink line runs on top and the traffic below. And so when you put this under construction, it's a big, complicated endeavor. But I think what makes this so difficult is that, the West Loop, Fulton Market area is just booming. So there's so much traffic on that street. This is going to be a bit of a headache.
So you mentioned the green and pink lines. I do want to point out the fact to people that are watching right now. So CTA service on the green and pink lines will continue while the bridge is closed, except for 2 shutdowns planned for fall of 2026 and spring of 2027. That is according to the Transportation Department. When we talk about these repairs that are being made to a bridge of this age, where does that fall in line with some of our other bridges? And could we expect to see even more construction projects because we do have so many bridges in and around Chicago?
Yeah, that's right. And we really are. People forget just the magnificent historic bridge layout we have. These are movable bridges, that can move up when we have barge traffic or boat traffic. And many were built when the L was at its peak. So they're built to last, that's for sure. But I think here, what's tough is this part of the loop, you have a lot of one-way streets. I mean, Lake Street runs one way in the area. It sort of alternates. But when traffic has to move, they often have to go a couple blocks. So like the eastbound traffic will have to go down to Washington and work its way up. And, Washington has transit lanes and so forth. So, it's going to be a bit of a moving target. I think what frustrates me is just the time lag on this. I think, a lot of states would be able to do this in a year and a half or 2 years. It's going to drag out for 3. And, that's become a little bit of a hot button for people where they see the Kennedy Expressway being drug out quite this long. So we're about to start a little adventure, you might say.
Yeah, you mentioned, why 3? It takes quite a long time, it sounds like, around these parts. In fact, the renovations were originally planned for 2024. Why does it take so long? I mean, I think that's probably the biggest question that we hear. You mentioned the Kennedy. We were asking the same thing. Why so long around these parts? Is this a situation on a state level, or is it bigger than that?
I think, one, they do leave some buffers for things to go wrong here. And in this case, we really want to do this without shutting down the L for much extended periods. And, we've done this different ways over time. Like when we rebuilt the Red Line South, we just shut it down for a few months and got it done quickly as opposed to dragging it out. So I think in this case, we're going to try to rebuild this bridge without closing down the L for a while. And that's a tough trade-off because it does drag things out. I think a lot of factors here, there's a supply chain is still a little tough and so forth. But I do think they're going to feel pressure to even exceed that 3-year timeline, which is pretty generous for reconstruction.
I'm looking at this. It says the Chicago Department of Transportation, the improvements for the bridge includes replacing the bridge's deck, substructures, and CTA tracks, and rehabilitating the bridge's houses and mechanical and electrical systems. My question to you is, when we look at our other bridges, are they being checked on a daily basis? Like, how often are they? And I ask that because some people have a fear that these bridges are not being checked. They're not being inspected regularly. Are they being inspected regularly?
Oh, they are. And I think Illinois has certainly gotten better. You look at us 10 years ago, and they have a term they call pavement serviceability and bridge conditions have all improved in the state from not so good levels. They've gotten better, and in this case, there's I think we can feel good. The Chicago Department of Transportation uh, does this as part of its routine plan in conjunction with the Army Corps of Engineers, which manages the waterways. So these are really, I think, bridges that have served the test of time well, and I don't think there's any safety risk per se. I think the problem we have is, so many of these bridges are a century old, so we're going to see more outages and so forth when there's lift boat traffic coming through and so forth, and that's the last thing we need right now is those bridges stuck in the up position.
It's very interesting that we're talking about this because, obviously Chicago is a city of a variety of bridges. And in fact, the Chicago Avenue Bridge is also undergoing repairs. The 17-month-long construction project shut down Halsted Street and Chicago Avenue. The bridge, which was narrowed to 2 lanes in August, will close completely after October to be fully replaced. Should Chicagoans get used to this, where there's phases of these bridges going down because they have to be repaired and trying to figure out and navigate around those? Should we start to get used to that because of the age of the bridges?
Well, I think the good news is yes, we'll have to get used to that. If you look at the Grand Michigan Avenue Bridge, and that's been refurbished and built in 1920 and so forth. But you're right about Halsted. That area with the West Loop Fulton Market just booming right now. I mean, a lot of corporate headquarters are going there. We just announced a few new high rises going up now, so that Halsted is really overworked, and the casino is coming in. So we really need to get that street and bridge work done before that casino's in full tilt, you might say. But we have the grid, and that's so much better than other cities where traffic sort of funnels onto our arterial roads. In most areas, traffic can move around the grid. Halsted, that's a little tougher, though.
When you mentioned something earlier that I want to go back to, and I may not paraphrase it exactly, but you were talking about, how, for example, the Lake Street Bridge is definitely seeing more traffic these days, probably even more traffic than it was designed for. When they're doing these type of repairs, are they now doing them with it in mind that it is seeing more foot traffic and also car traffic as well? Because 109 years ago, I'm sure they were not expecting this many people to be flooding that Lake Street Bridge.
Yeah, it's in a way a blessing that engineers a century ago often over-engineered the bridges, that they designed them for weights that were beyond what we have, and trucks now are limited to about 80,000 pounds, and we're lucky that most of these bridges can handle that. So we probably don't need any structural enhancements because of the way they're engineered. I can say though that you use such a tremendous amount of steel. I mean, just incredible. And we know there's import quotas and so forth on that. So that's going to add a wrinkle to this. But it has a lot of these also declared landmarks that adds a wrinkle to it as well. And I think you look at the Lake Street Bridge and the Well Street Bridge where the L's are on top. Those are really magnificent structures. So unfortunately, that'll drag out the improvement timeline.
You mentioned landmark, 109 years old, got to be a landmark for the age. Is there something that happens differently when it comes to repairing a bridge that is of that age? Is it handled differently?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, look at the interstates, and most of those are reinforced concrete bridges, and they're concrete with steel pylons, and those have a useful life of around 40 years or so. The concrete and the steel sort of expand about the same rate, so when it gets hot or cold, they're quite durable. But we're seeing that in those bridges, you often just have to start over. And Illinois has replaced a lot of those bridges. And you look at like the Stevens Expressway, I-55, we have a real challenge that highway is built on stilts and reinforced concrete pylons. That's much tougher because you you have to kind of start over and put that traffic somewhere. Whereas on the Lake Street Bridge, we're mostly going to just shut the street down. Of course, there'll be a lot of welding and improvements and replacement of where we see structural defects. But we're not going to have to, in effect, likely, I'm not sure of the details, but take it down, so to speak. It is, though, you wonder how long these historic bridges can be revamped in this way because, a century old, it's there's no doubt some corrosion happening.
Good point. And I want to go back to something that we kind of touched on at the top of this interview, and that was really the timeline. That is where you have a lot of people upset. Some of the words that I've seen for this, I can't even say because those are the words that people are using. 3 years. Have we seen in your research, your expertise, somewhere else, maybe in the United States, where a bridge has been repaired in this way and it doesn't take 3 years? And then my follow up to that is, why is it taking so long?
That's I've been quite critical of this too, and it's maybe not fair to look to Europe and Germany where they have national budgets that can get things done in 10 months or so, and we saw that with some of the construction around Frankfurt Airport and even on the rail system there, where you just can't physically afford to shut something down this long. There is ways to do that. Of course, on the rail system, you can't divert a train around a bridge usually. So when you have refurbishment there, it happens much faster. I think in this case, we're saddled with a number of long procurement processes to find a contractor to meet historic standards and so forth. All that said, I think the public is saying, we just have to do this faster because we don't have the excess capacity on these other roads like we used to. You go to Washington in rush hour, and that place is quite busy over there. So traffic funneling onto that road, it's going to create tie-up. So I really do hope that this is a worst case scenario because 3 years is too long.